dream that one day this nation will rise up, live out the true meaning of its creed. We hold these truths to be self-evident.
In the councils of government, we must guard against the acquisition of unwarranted influence, whether sought or unsought, by the military-industrial complex. The potential for the disastrous rise of misplaced power exists and will persist.
The very word secrecy is repugnant in a free and open society, and there is very grave danger that an announced need for increased security will be seized upon by those anxious to expand its meaning to the very limits of official censorship and concealment.
And now, the moment you've all been waiting for. The newest show sensation streaming throughout the multiverse. Your hang place in cyberspace for paranormal news and views. Taboo Topics with Gene Broida.
Welcome, everyone, to Taboo Topics with Gene Broida. I'm your host, Gene Broida, also known as Lightworker 111, beaming to you from sea to shining sea, across the Americas and the world, every Sunday night between 7 and 9 p.m. Eastern Time on my Taboo Topics YouTube channel and at tabootopics.life/shows, and broadcast live tonight on the Global Enlightenment Radio Network, GERN. Thank you, GERN. Panelists on today's Taboo Topics with Gene Broida share news articles about paranormal events, conspiracies, and other hush-hush subjects that we all explore and probe further before moving on to the next taboo topic. And on today's show, please welcome our guest panelists, the excellent Corae Hack, a lifelong ET experiencer and psychic, and Tyler Kiwala, paranormal researcher and on-air personality. Corae, please share a bit more about you with everyone.
Well, my history goes on a long way. My abilities come from a long line of psychics, mediums, palm readers, teacup readers, card or tarot readers on both my father's and my mother's side. So I got like a double dose of it. My father's side goes back at least 6 generations. My grandmother was trained by gypsies in Europe. She used to go to the gypsy trains and be trained by all of them in the arts of tarot and card and healing and all that. So she's got a very exciting background. She's no longer with us. She's on the other side, I'm sure, guiding me. And my grandmother on my mother's side, she was an orphan. So she was left on the church steps of a Catholic church. And so we really don't know what her background was and how my mother came to get some of her abilities. So I'm quite sure it goes way back in her line as well. And so many of my immediate family members are gifted as well, healing, psychic, also mediums, because you don't necessarily, if you're psychic, you're not necessarily a medium, but if you're medium, you're psychic. So I've had a lot of my own experiences. My parents knew I had abilities from about the age of 3, because I would talk about the friends I had and who I was talking to. I actually got attacked one time, a spirit chasing me with an axe, and I actually got cut on my hand when I held my hand up when he brought it down, and it was bleeding. So my mom knew at that point I was, really going through a lot of different things. And then when I was 5, 2 days after my grandfather's funeral, I was looking out the front bedroom window and I saw him standing in the yard looking at me and waving at me. And I was going, well, he was dead in the coffin and now he's standing outside waving at me. So it kind of scared me a bit because I didn't realize my friends were dead, but I realized my grandfather was dead. So I kind of screamed, ran in the living room and told my dad, and he just looks at me and goes, now I know you have my mother's gift. So very early I got exposed to some training. My father's sister, my aunt, was also a medium as well. And so I kind of had an informal training my whole entire life. They would give me books to read, and I would practice an awful lot. We got in some of the esoteric things. I took some tarot courses later on when I was in my 20s or so. I worked at Psychic Hotline before. I worked at Psychic Fairs in Canada. I'm Canadian, and I moved down here in 2012 to get married to Ian. But I never knew I was a medium until 2017 when I did a witches' night out at a friend of mine at her home, and she educated me on the difference between a psychic and a medium. So I was like really excited about that. Now, apparently, through other mediums, I've been told I'm an evidential medium. And I'll go into that a little bit later on as to the definitions of things and what things are to kind of make things a little clearer for people, because when you hear terms, you don't really understand them. So I'll kind of give a brief little explanation about some of the things, and some people say, oh, I can do that, or oh, I've done that before. And that can be really, really helpful to people when you kind of explain things a little bit more. Because even if you're psychic, you don't always know what kind of a gift you have or what you can do. My background is I also telepath with ETs, with UFOs. I know when they're there. I don't call it abducted. I talk about being an experiencer and joining my friends, because I don't feel that any of them are negative at all. I also communicate with Sasquatch or Bigfoot as well, telepathically, and of course spirit. And as I talked to Mary Rodwell at Contact in the Desert, the one that we went to, Jean, I speak light language. It doesn't happen very often, but I didn't know what that was all about either. So that's kind of a broad range of some of the things that are my background.
I have to ask, what was it like growing up with mystics, with people who helped you train your talents? Or did you just take it for granted?
Yeah, I kind of just took it for granted. However, I did learn very early on. I attended Catholic school. My parents came from Germany. They immigrated to Canada in '57. And they didn't speak English, they spoke German. So German was my mother tongue. I never learned English to grade 1. And being in a Catholic school system, my father wanted us in that system because Catholics have a better education than the public school systems did up in Canada at that time. And my mom came from a Catholic background, so, you know, it just kind of fit. But when I was 8 years old, I kind of made a comment about, you know, seeing spirits and talking to people that are dead. And the nuns whisked me to the office, and the nun was a principal. And about an hour later, I ended up in one of the dioceses in Calgary with a bishop, and they tried to do an exorcism on me without my parents' permission. They didn't know where I was. And that was the scariest thing ever. Because then I found out afterwards that I kind of had to lie about my abilities to other people. I had to be careful about what I said to people that were outside the family. So there was a little bit of fear involved from the public. And I was kind of afraid that I was going to end up, you know, ending up in a mental institution or something, right? It was kind of scary. But in our family, we developed a lot. You know, my mom, she would look at our photographs and our school pictures that we get with the class pictures, and she could point at people and say exactly what they were like, what they did, who to be careful of. And I actually can look at photographs and I see spirits in photographs that nobody else can see. And I will describe them to people. And they'll say, that's my uncle. Like, how do you see my uncle? And it's like, he's right there. And don't you see him? No, I don't see him. So, you know, it was exciting though. Like I saw a UFO that I remember from my first time when I was about 11 or 12. I do have 3 implants. 2 were ET implants, and the other one, I don't really want to say what that is on video. I don't want to get harassed.
Well, you know what? At this point, I'm going to insert my right as the host and say, wow, Corae, you're amazing.
Oh,
Tyler, amaze us, dude. I know you're amazing too.
I don't know if I don't have quite that extensive of a background going back that far. I was basically in a coma most of my life as far as being asleep to all this stuff, as far as UFOs and paranormal and Sasquatch. And I was always interested in it all, but I never looked into it until I really had, I would guess what most people call an awakening in about 2015. And I started having experiences. I'm definitely an experiencer. I've had ET experiences. I've had Sasquatch experiences, paranormal. They started off negative. I figured out why very quickly and changed that. I took care of that, but I know it all happened for a reason. I became obsessed with it. It forced me to start researching and looking into this stuff, and it became my life. I found myself separating from the old me and becoming somebody, I guess what people will call now as light workers. And that's what my main focus is now. A friend and I started Journey to Truth podcast. So I co-host that once a week. And we talk about these insane but beautiful topics every week, and hopefully just spread the message that this stuff is real and this stuff exists. And everyone really needs to start taking it seriously, because reality is not what we've been taught.
And you graced me on your show.
Yeah, we've had Gene on the podcast about a month ago now, I would say, which was amazing. We got into some awesome stuff about the Australian wildfires. It went over really well. It was a really fun episode.
That was scary when it was going down. And your co-host, Aaron Kuhn, was a guest on Taboo Topics as well. We're getting our sea legs here, but it's happening. Back to you, Tyler. Tell us about what's up and coming for you this year. I know you're off to some exciting events.
Yes. So I'm going back to first off, we have been gifted with the opportunity to film a documentary on the Cahokia Mounds, which is about 20 minutes away from us over in Illinois. And it's going to bring shed new light on what really took place there, not what the mainstream history tells us. That will be coming out later this year, if not early next year. It's going to be a big project. And I'll be going to Board Camp Crystal Mine, where we had a lot of Sasquatch and UFO activities last fall, going back there. I'll be at ECETI Ranch in July. I'll be in Colorado for a conference, Dimensions of Disclosure, in August. And who knows what in between. So a lot of amazing guests on the podcast, so it's a lot to look forward to this year.
Oh, tell us more about ECETI Ranch, please.
Oh,
I can't hear enough about this place.
Yeah, so Board Camp Crystal Mine is actually very similar to ECETI. It's just a lot closer. That's in Mena, Arkansas. But ECETI, it's basically a place where the veil is thin. Everything and anything that you can imagine, people see there, as far as Sasquatch, pterodactyls, UFOs, orbs, fairies, any cryptozoology type of creatures. I mean, people have had experiences out there. You know, NASA's been out there. Every major TV network has been out there filming. The Ancient Aliens has filmed an episode out there. Expedition Unknown with Josh Gates. There's a lot. It's a hot spot for paranormal activity. But it's not just that. You have to be energetically prepared to go there, because it'll bring up everything, every emotion, anything you've been suppressing, it'll bring to the surface. People go there, they'll start crying. They'll be blissed out. You almost feel like you're buzzed. The energy, it's a vortex. And Mount Adam, it's right next to Mount Adams, which you can see UFOs flying in and out of all the time. We even got to witness a door literally opens up on the side of the mountain and closes back up. there's a pyramid there that you can see at certain times. It's a light pyramid. It's like just in another dimension. It'll show up sometimes. Sometimes it's not. It's quite extraordinary. Corae Good, he's a whistleblower, secret space program whistleblower. When he first got out to that property, he couldn't believe that the government hadn't taken over that property yet. He said, any place like this has been turned into a military base or a dome, a deep underground military base. The government has taken it over, and they utilize the energy for their own purposes. So the fact that this place even exists baffled him. So at least we have something going for us, you know. But other than that, it's an amazing place, and I highly recommend everyone getting out there. You don't have to go for a conference. You can just go and do the Skywatch events, the night watches, and stay for a couple of nights and just hang out. And there's so much to do on the land. It's definitely a spiritual retreat. It's somewhere you go to activate whatever needs to be activated.
It sounds great to me. Who doesn't want to be activated?
Sure.
And for all of you who've just tuned in, this is Taboo Topics with Jean Broida, being broadcast live on the Global Enlightenment Radio Network, GERN, our good friends at GERN, and available on my YouTube channel. Please click subscribe and the little bell to get show alerts. I am your host, Jean Broida, and I too am a lifelong UFO researcher. I'm a parapsychologist. I've written a book called Unknown Objects, the Top 10 US UFO Cases. And those 10 cases in that book, from the Foo Fighters of World War II through the Phoenix Lights of 1997, will help you understand why you must be crazy not to believe in UFOs and their alien occupants. Okay, people? Now, I'm an avid news hound. I have degrees in computer science, psychology, and education, and I've been to the School of Hard Knocks as well. I'm a practicing mystic, specializing in tarot cards and astrology. I write daily articles for a variety of publications, notably thedailyconspiracy.com and survival.update. And I'm just one of millions of truth seekers and star seeds on Earth right now who have been and are continuing to wake up in consciousness to question the emotional impact that sweeping official cover-ups have had over 7 decades on society. These cover-ups are messing with our minds, with our psyches, and now with our society. And it's ironic because we're living in these remarkable times as light workers, awakening to universal truths in numbers never before seen on Earth, as far as we know. And certainly all of us here on today's show hope you'll enjoy our topics as we shed light in the dark corners of reality as we know it. So now let's begin talking about some taboo topics. And I'm happy to toss the first ball, I think that's the sports phrase, and lead us off with a juicy news article on this taboo topic. This is an article that I wrote, inspired actually by Tyler Kiwala, esteemed guest here. He gave a presentation and I liked it so much, it piqued my curiosity. I had to write it up for thedailyconspiracy.com, and it was published February 28th this year, 2020. It's called Voice to Skull, Silent Sound Weapon. So this is a bit of a departure from my usual UFO stock, but it is a conspiracy for sure, not a theory, it's fact, and it is a taboo topic. So here we go. For decades, US taxpayer money has been funding hush-hush military operations, including extensive and expensive research on and development of weapons that stop short of killing. One chilling non-lethal weapon, NLW, non-lethal weapon. It's called Voice to Skull. This little known technology creates a microwave auditory effect that transmits a beam of high frequency microwaves, like you pop popcorn, that turn into sound when they interact with a human's head. Only people exposed to the beam hear the sound inside their heads. Now, the idea of a telepathic ray gun was first envisioned by the US Army seriously in 1998. A report released by US Army Intelligence and Security Command at Fort Meade, Maryland, reviewed what was, at the time, the bleeding edge of directed energy weapons research and development. Among them was a microwave gun that could beam words directly into people's ears. Based on the Fray effect, where close-range microwaves produce audible sounds in a targeted subject's ears, this NLW successfully projected the spoken numbers 1 through 10 across a lab to human volunteers. The Federation of American Scientists defined voice to skull, which is abbreviated V2K. The Federation of American Scientists defined these V2K devices in 2004 and rated them not only harmless to humans, but useful for pest control. Quote, non-lethal weapon, which includes a neuroelectromagnetic device, which uses microwave transmission of sound into the skull of persons or animals by way of pulse modulation microwave radiation. And 2, talking about features of one of these devices, a silent sound device which can transmit sound into the skull of persons or animals. Note, the sound modulation may be voice or audio, subliminal messages. One application of V2K is for use as an electronic scarecrow to frighten birds in the vicinity of airports, unquote. Okay, so they're saying using sound to put, I'm extrapolating, I'm leaving the article for a moment. They're just saying that sound is being used to put words into the heads of people and animals. Now, continuing, a self-described targeted individual, TI, named Gary D. Chance, read the FAS description of V2K technology, and Chance wrote a response claiming he was a long-term victim of focused electromagnetic radiation attacks from a source he could identify. Quoting Gary D. Chance, electromagnetic radiation communication of sound has been used against me 24/7 for 3 years and 4 months starting in February 2001, no matter where I am located. A key person involved is well known to me, so there are no mystery voices here. It's interesting to note that this is pulsed, which drops part of the frequency used down to the level of brain wave frequency, which can be as low as 10 hertz, unquote. Now, comparing the hertz levels between a new police communication system called UK Tetra and the V2K signals, Chance concluded, quote, this could prove to be quite harmful and lethal in many instances. It's not exactly a non-lethal weapon and is an instrument of torture interrogation with lethal consequences from its usage. It is not being used for just scaring birds away, unquote. Next, consider the Medusa. It took me a while to catch on to this name. Medusa, mob excess deterrent using silent audio. This is a weapon rolled out in 2008 by the US-based Sierra Nevada Corporation. A TI support website revealed, quote, this weapon bypasses the eardrum using a pulsed microwave and microwave audio effect to create voices and sounds in the heads of the targeted person, unquote. MAE results in a strong sound sensation in the human head when it is irradiated with specifically selected microwave pulses of low energy. Through the combination of pulse parameters and pulse power, it is possible to raise the auditory sensation to the discomfort level, deterring personnel from entering a protected perimeter, or, if necessary, temporarily incapacitating particular individuals. It's alarming enough to realize that the US military has been spending citizens' money on weapons that could easily be used against us. But new information suggests a much more insidious and sweeping agenda to use directed mind control on us, the people. A US patent was granted for a method and apparatus that can be used by the general public as an aid to relaxation, sleep, or sexual arousal, and clinically for the control and perhaps treatment of insomnia, tremors, epileptic seizures, and anxiety disorders. Well, that doesn't sound so bad, does it? But wait, there's more. Quote, there is further application, says the patent, as a non-lethal weapon that can be used in law enforcement standoff situations for causing drowsiness and disorientation in targeted subjects, unquote. The patent notes that the 1/2 hertz sensory resonance affects the autonomic nervous system and may cause relaxation, drowsiness, or sexual excitement, depending on the precise acoustic frequency near 1/2 hertz used. The effects of the 2.5 hertz resonance include slowing of certain cortical processes, sleepiness, and disorientation, unquote. If you object to the clear and present danger of military-grade directed energy weapons that control humans by creating discomfort inside their heads, contact your elected officials to voice your opposition to V2K assault weapons. That's the end of the article, but I just wanted to kick in as a postscriptum that since I've written this article, even since then, I've heard from other people, especially people who've been to paranormal conventions, because I tend to commingle with them. They say that they are at a convention and they're sitting in a crowded auditorium, and all of a sudden they have ringing in their ears. They're feeling very uncomfortable, this discomfort that was described, and that they get nauseous as well, quite often nauseous, and that they at first think it's something they ate or anxiety, who knows what, but this condition follows them wherever they go, basically, like the little lamb, follows them around. It's whack. And once you're targeted, apparently it's very hard to be untargeted. And that's a blight. That just wears you down, because if you're hearing voices in your head, and especially if they're urging you to do bad things to people, which reminds me of serial killers who claim they heard voices in their head. People get off on that tangent, that little rabbit hole, that this V2K technology is what's behind a lot of the so-called false flag events, where psychopathic, sociopathic behavior is acted out on unsuspecting we the people types, citizens, average everyday citizens, to create a problem that New World Order globalists will step in to solve for our benefit, but the benefit actually ends up being martial law or something along that line. So what do you guys think about this voice to skull stuff?
Well, since I presented on it, I know quite a bit about it. And you're right, as far as...
and you're way loud, by the way.
I'm sorry.
That's okay, but I'm just letting you know. Loud and clear. Yeah. Maybe a little too low. Go ahead.
How about that? Is that better?
It's better, but it's just a little on the high side. That'll be perfect. Go.
Okay. I hope so. Sorry about that. Definitely, you're right. As far as the conferences being infiltrated with what the TIs refer to as gang stalkers. They say they're followed, and and I've heard many cases of people at conferences, especially Dimensions of Disclosure last year and Contact in the Desert. Some of the speakers knew about this, and they actually they had high security at Contact in the Desert last year that was kind of unknown to the people there. A lot of speakers requested the camera be on them at all time, just in case anything was to happen. It's a real problem. It's a real concern, and I can attest to everything you said because I've researched it all myself, and I've met and interviewed some of the targeted individuals. So this is definitely a real technology that's being used that people are it's affecting people's lives, and it's nothing to joke about, really.
Did you ever encounter anybody who was able to shake the targeting?
Yes. They after years, because most people don't know what it is at first. They just think they're going crazy. But it takes, first of all, learning about it, understanding what it is, and then it doesn't affect people who are strong-willed. So if you can combat it and you can get yourself into a strong state of mind and you're not existing in depression or whatever else may be keeping you down, you have a high vibe diet, you can get yourself at a frequency to where this technology, it doesn't actually work on everybody. That's one of the things I've found out. So if you're existing and living your life from the heart and you're not doing anything negative to begin with, because they attack the people who already have the negative traits, or some people are just innocent. It's so layered, but it is possible to combat, definitely.
Yeah, definitely meditation helps an awful lot because it raises your vibration. And to put that protective white light around you on every morning and every night. And also when I go into large crowds, I just unconsciously ask ET to protect me for anything that's going to happen there negatively, because they're my friends. They don't want to see me suffer. And so I basically ask for them to protect me so that none of that stuff comes into my field. Actually, when I've gone to conferences, I have a lot of pain issues. And when we went to the Ozark Mountain UFO conference 2 years ago, I was taking up to 6 Tylenol 4s per day because of my pain. I had my walker. As soon as I got to that conference, all my pain was gone. It was such a high vibration. I never took one single opioid the whole time I was there because of the positive energy that was around there. And as soon as I left, everything came back. So the vibration and the frequency, I feel it a lot. And when you're in tune and vibrate at that higher rate, it's like Tyler said, a lot of us are protected already, but also trying to cleanse your body. And I'm starting to get into that a little bit. You know, Tyler's offered some information on it, and I'm going to start looking at getting some of the heavy metals out of my body and whatnot as well. That will help, because apparently that vibration pings against those heavy metals in your body too, and that makes it worse. So
makes a lot of sense, actually.
Yeah. And
you're the third person today, I think, who's mentioned a cleanse.
Right.
To clean out these heavy metals. It's going around. It's the buzz, right?
Well, and also, I just wanted to quickly mention that this technology first was developed in Montauk many decades ago with the Montauk projects and all that. So a lot of that kind of stems and drifted and trickled and became more compartmentalized into the different areas for all of this research. And Tyler knows all about that too.
Absolutely. Oh yeah, I think everybody here in this little forum knows about that stuff. The MK Ultra. Mm-hmm. That's a story that is so deeply engrossing for me, at least, and has so many split off stories.
Definitely.
That would be an incredible series of either books or movies or shows, and I would imagine it's been done in time and again. But whoa,
can I jump in about
yeah.
the heavy metals really quick? Just I'm gonna.
Oh, take your time. We got 2 hours. What are we doing?
I'm gonna sound crazy here, but maybe not. So we all hear about this micronova, the solar flash event. Its potential. It's spoken about in every ancient religion around the world. So if, let's say, this event is real, and let's say the cabal or the deep state knows about this, what happens when you put metal in a microwave? It explodes. It sparks. We had a solar flash in the late 1800s where people's pennies melted in their pockets. Metal signs, metal street poles literally melted. Well, now what happens when this metal is inside of our bodies and another micronova hits? What do you think is going to happen to our bodies? Who knows? But it can't be good. That this is the purpose for the chemtrails and the aluminum in our deodorants and the metal in everywhere. We breathe this stuff in, we absorb it in our skin. We willingly put it on when we're putting on deodorant and so many other ways, so many other products, lotions. To me, it's a master plan. This is their master plan, and this is their agenda, because it's like we're going to be blasted with radiation with this event. So who knows what will happen? You muted yourself, Gene.
That's Ian. Is Gene muted?
Yeah.
Yeah, I did it because I'm so gabby. If I don't mute myself, I just blather stuff and I blurt stuff out. But I'm trying to multitask here. It's not easy, but I'm learning as I go. And we actually have a comment on the Global Enlightenment Radio Network Facebook page from Ryushin Malone or Maloney. I hope I didn't just butcher your name there, but this person said they attacked me for 2 months with what seemed like a 5D experience, two-way conversation, seeing people in a different reality. It was a nightmare. Sympathies for having to deal with that. Wow. Amazing stuff. As Johnny Carson used to say, wild and wacky stuff. But this is getting really personal. This is bringing it close to home when people are being targeted with sound and technologies beyond the grasp of most of us. By grasp, I mean not comprehension. We can comprehend this stuff, but we don't have access to it. Taxpayer money is being used to develop these weapons for crowd control. Well, who's the crowd? That's us. We're the crowd. No more public assembly here. I'm going to start ranting a little bit about our civil rights, but it's my show. I get to just say the United States has changed since the end of World War II, and some things are better and some things aren't, naturally. And I'm not pining nostalgically for the good old days, because in the good old days, JFK was assassinated. Things weren't all great then either. And talking about a targeted individual, not necessarily with sound waves, but on a hit list, a series of peacemakers on a hit list, one after another, including a couple of the Beatles, so musicians is what I'm saying. Music has the power to bring peace. Music is vibration. These prevailing themes are so obvious when you start to look and focus your attention that way. But most people are so distracted, not anybody listening to us, of course, because you found us, hooray. But the mainstream keeps people docile on purpose, unquestioning. And thank goodness for shows like yours, podcast, Journey to Truth, Tyler and Aaron, and humbly, this show, other shows that are talking about taboo topics. And welcome, if you just tuned in to Taboo Topics with Gene Broida. We are kicking around some interesting discussions. We just tore apart voice to skull technology. And Tyler, would you like to bring our next taboo topic to the table?
I would. So I had two prepared, and they're not actually articles. They're diary entries. One is from people who claim they've been to inner Earth. The other one is from a government operation that sent people off planet to planet Serpo. These
Oh,
are
Serpo. If I get a vote, Serpo.
Serp-
What do you think, Corae?
Yeah, I know I'm from the Pleiades, so I have contact with ET from the Pleiades and stuff, but they originally come from Orion and moved over in that sector. So we're kind of all related in one way or another anyways, right?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure I dropped down from Pleiades in the late 50s. Take it away, Tyler Kiwala.
All right, first of all, I'm going to read just a quick run through of the back of the book, just so you can get an idea of what this is about. So, on July 16th, 1965, a massive alien spacecraft from the Zeta Reticuli star system landed at the Nevada test site north of Las Vegas. Following a plan set in motion by President Kennedy in 1962, the alien visitors, known as the Ebens, welcomed 12 astronaut-trained military personnel astronaut-trained personnel aboard their craft for a 10-month journey to their home planet Serpo, 39 light years away. In November 2005, former and current members of the DIA, the Defense Intelligence Agency, directed by Kennedy to organize the Serpo exchange program, came forward to reveal the operation, including details from the 3,000-page debriefing of the 7 members of the Serpo team who returned after 13 years on the planet. So this is a fascinating story. It is literally a journal. You're reading a diary from these astronauts who were chosen to go off planet to go spend 10 years, which ended up being 13 years because they didn't know how to really keep track of Earth time on this planet. They trained for quite a while. There was an extensive screening process for a lot of people, and they just deciding on who was going to go. So the movie Close Encounters of the Third Kind has a scene where 12 astronauts board a craft. That scene directly is depicting this secret mission to planet Serpo. So that movie actually takes a lot of stuff from this mission and they use it in that movie. It's really interesting, and they connect all the dots. So I just highlighted one part of the diary, I guess you could say, that, man, it's so fascinating. But this is whenever so I'll just do a little background. One of their friends was killed on the way, never even made it to the planet. When they got to the planet, they wouldn't let them see their friend's body. Finally, when they got a chance to see the body, this is what they saw, and it's fascinating stuff. So I'll just go ahead and run through. And by the way, they all refer to themselves as numbers, not names, because it's military. So there are misspellings in the journal, and they left them that way. So this is in the genetic laboratory. So Ebe 2 came to the hut. I told Ebe 2 that we were going to examine what was left of 308's body. 308's the dead body. They would also research into the Ebens experiments done on 308's body. If this is confusing, you'll understand here in a second. It is sometimes difficult for us, after the time we've been on this planet, to determine the meaning of facial expressions of an Eben's face. Ebe 2 replied that she must first obtain approval. Approval was a new word for her. She was a must reading. See, that's one of the misspellings. She must have been reading or learning the language. Maybe she is picking up a few words. Then she got permission that we were told that when we arrived that we did not have any restrictions on where we went. Ebe 2 said she would speak with the leader. 633 and 700 gathered the test equipment and prepared themselves for the examination of the Eben laboratory. According to our time devices, Ebe 2 came back about 80 minutes later, said it was all right for the men to visit the laboratory. I'll skip through here. We had been taken by a helitransport device, which we call helicopters on their planet. It took us some time before arriving at this location. According to our compass readings, which are not really a compass reading because there are no reference points, but according to them, they traveled north. The facility was large by even standards. The military looked like a large single-story windowless school. We landed on the roof, or maybe just a landing zone on the roof. We were escorted down a walkway or ramp. They don't have ladders on this planet. I think I wrote that in one of my past entries. They have ramps. We arrived in a room, white walls. When we walked through the hallway into a larger room, we met our English-speaking doctor. We saw many other Ebens, all dressed in a bluish colored one-piece suit, different from their ordinary suits I spoke of in past entries. The doctor told us that all the experiments done inside this building, he didn't call it a laboratory, just called it a building, are done to create cloned beings. So this is an entire facility where they're cloning beings on another planet. We were led into another room where there were rows of containers looking like glass bathtubs. Inside each bathtub were bodies. I was shocked. The bodies were strange looking bodies, not human bodies, at least not all of them. We started walking down the space between the tubs. We looked into the tubs. These were hideous looking creatures. I asked the doctor what type of creatures were inside these tubs. The doctor told us that these creatures came from other planets. We asked the doctor, were these creatures dead when they arrived? Or did they bring them here dead? The doctor said all the creatures were brought to the planet alive. 700 asked if the creatures were kidnapped or brought here against their wishes. The doctor was not sure of the word kidnapped. The doctor seemed puzzled. The doctor asked the question about what kidnapped was. They finally figured out what it was. 700, he said that the creatures were taken from another planet and brought to Serpo without permission from their leaders of their planet. So essentially, we're talking about abduction. The doctor said these beings were brought here for experiments. These creatures are not intelligent beings. Then we used the word animals. They didn't know what the word animal was. They had a big debate on what was what. I asked the doctor if there were any intelligent creatures in the building. The doctor said yes, but when we got all of them, they were dead when they arrived. So they had permission. The ones they had permission for were already dead bodies to use, which is interesting. And then they asked if they could see the creatures. The doctor corrected and said beings, not creatures. So they wanted to make sure they didn't call them creatures. Let me first write down the description of these creatures inside these tubs. They are not all alike. The first creature I see inside the tub looks like a porcupine. It appears they have a tube placed inside of it. The tube leads to a box underneath the tub. The second creature I see looks like a monster. It has a large head, big eyes, deep set eyes, no ears or mouth, but no teeth. It is about 5 feet long, has 2 lower legs, but no feet. It has 2 arms, but it doesn't appear to have any elbows. It has hands, but no fingers. This creature also has a tube going into it. The next creature looks like nothing I can compare it to. Has blood red skin, 2 spots in the middle, maybe eyes, no arms or legs. It has a very strange odor. The skin appeared to be blotchy with scales, maybe like a fish. Maybe it is a fish. The next creature was human-like, but the skin was white. Not skin white, the color white. The skin was wrinkled. The head was large with 2 eyes, 2 ears, and a mouth. The neck was very small. The head almost looked as if it sat on the lower torso. The chest is thin with a large bone-like protrusions. The arms were curled. The hands had no thumbs. The legs are also curled, but the feet only had 3 toes. I couldn't look at it anymore. So that's just one short part of this book. It's amazing what just getting to read the day-to-day log of what life is like on another planet. I just thought, and it's interesting because the Ebens don't have the ability to lie. So every time we ask the question, they're like, even if it was something negative they were doing, they just told them, yeah, we've abducted people from Earth. We've abducted people from all other planets. It's just part of what they do. It's fascinating. So I just thought I would.
And what's the title of that? You want to hold that cover up for interested viewers and say it for the radio audience?
Secret Journey to Planet Serpo, a true story of interplanetary travel.
By
Len Kasten.
With a K.
With a K.
Yes, neatly done.
And he was actually in charge of, they call it the Big Red Book, which is the book that every president gets their ET briefing. He was editor for that book for many years. So when this information came out online, he quickly validated it, and he said this is definitely legitimate. This is definitely legitimate. There are also 6 photos that were released. 5 were taken back down immediately, but 1 photo is in the book, and it's been tested. As far as everybody knows, it's the only publicly available actual photograph from another planet that hasn't been debunked. It's of a sunset, but there's 2 suns in the sky. They had other ones that got leaked, but they're no longer available. So
Now, what were the dates on the Serpo expeditions? Do you know? Didn't they start in the 1950s?
1965
Okay.
is when they left. They came back in 78. Yeah, 78. They were supposed to come back in 75, but they lost track of time. They brought like 45 tons worth of equipment with them onto this planet, and they were worried about like how they had a whole arsenal ready to load this giant craft, which was small bit by the time they got up to the mothership. But they had everybody ready to load it up, but they didn't need to, because the ETs just like lifted it up like with some technology and just moved it basically. And so we obtained so much of our technology from that planet. Everything we use today, most of it comes from this planet. Everything as far as like the plasma TVs, this just simple stuff that we just take for granted.
Like microwaves, would that be included, do you think?
Possibly. I don't know. They never said microwaves in this book, but they brought back some devices with them, and we've been back to the planet. They've been back here 8 times since. We've just we're back and forth all the time, and it takes 10 months to get there. Not because it's 39 light years away, but they have to, like, there's a Stargate system. Every star is aligned by the cosmic web, but you can't always just jump because those portals aren't always open. So you have to go to one location and essentially wait until things are aligned till that portal's open. So you basically have to portal hop to get there. And they explain all that, like what it's like while they're going through a portal on the ship and while they're not. When they're going through a portal on the ship, they gave each person their own atmosphere bubble. If they leave that bubble, they become sick, ill. That's how they think one of them died, because it was a miscommunication at the beginning because they didn't quite understand each other. But anytime they were traveling through the portal, essentially, they had to stay in their bubble and sit. And they finally got a chance to explore the ship, and they thought it was crazy. Every time they would look out the windows, they didn't see stars. They just saw blackness, which people have seen. There's photos of the moon. People are like, oh, if this was real, there's no stars in the background. It's really interesting. I don't know why they don't see stars, but it's just one of those mysteries, I guess.
What do you think, Corae?
Well, I'm just wondering what they would do for food, because every being would want, some would feed off energy, but if they're a physical being, each person's or being's needs are different. I know that some grays, they have chlorophyll lines that they put almost into their veins almost, but it doesn't hurt them. It just feeds chlorophyll into their veins, and then that's how they live. They don't actually have to eat anything, but that's how they get their energy. And that's produced by the ship and whatnot. And then there's more energy beings, they feed off of energy. And then you've got all these other people, their beings, they live off of fear, the fear vibration, for instance. That's why there's much fear caused in humans, because that's what they need to live on. And so I was just curious if there's anything in that book about the way that people needed to eat or grow things.
So they brought rations to last them for 10 years. Well, they ran out way sooner. They were even on the ship, the Ebens kept giving them food, and some of them ate it, some of them didn't. The ones that didn't eat it were always sick. So whatever was in that food helped them survive, because they call it like, it's almost like jet lag or something. You get this weird thing when you're traveling in space. So they finally all realized they need to be eating this food, but they said it was horrible. It was tasteless. They taught themselves to like it, basically, but they ate their rations also. And what's interesting is on the planet, they saw where they grow the food and everything. And a lot of our ways that we garden or grow food now, we've obtained from that planet, as far as like the greenhouse and all this stuff. But I was going to say something. So they actually, not every one of them returned either. So two of them decided, or three of them decided that they wanted to stay and live out their lives on this planet. And they did. Everyone who has returned is dead now, because they experienced so much radiation on this planet, which was extremely hot, by the way. They had to adjust to it, that they all had severe radiation effects when they came back. And the last one, I think, died in like 2006 or something. And they were promised all this glory and fame for agreeing to do this, and none of that was. The government didn't hold up to their end of the deal on that, because we still don't know about this. We've never heard about it, but it's fascinating.
They were kind of experimental, I think. They were experiments by the government, because our government, I mean, you remember Valiant Thor came to the Pentagon through Dr. Frank Stranges. He wrote all about that too, and how they offered us health and free energy and all the rest of it, so we could all live without pain or diseases or anything. And the government refused it. They said, no, that's going to ruin our economy. That's going to roil the oil industry. They weren't going to have all the money, this and all this New World Order money and all that. It was going to ruin them, but they didn't care about anybody else, right?
Correct.
So.
Yeah. They also had ways of healing on this planet. So every time they would get sick, they would just bring in this, they had like this light pen thing that would almost make, because there were times during the travel where all of them got sick, even if they were in their bubble, like because we're not used to, you have to acclimate to that type of travel. They would come in with this light and just shine this light on them, and they would immediately feel better. Or there's like this blue type of drink. They would drink it, and just like instantly, they said they would feel like the worst they've ever felt in their life, like they were getting ready to die. And they would drink this stuff and just pop back like normal. And it's just and we obtained that stuff. I mean, there's no way we didn't, if we didn't obtain all the other technology, including how to travel the stars without using rocket based technology.
Right.
It's amazing. It really is. The extent of the deception, and of course, skeptics, and skepticism is healthy. I'm a skeptic, but there's so much evidence that taxpayer money has been used on covert operations for decades to do stuff like this, whether the taxpayers want it or not, whether the taxpayers benefit or not. And there seems to be no end to it. Meanwhile, the government and certain elite are literally profiting. Government contractors are literally profiting from these operations and technologies. There's a Black economy that's grown up in the United States, to the point where something profound is going to have to happen to shake that big tree, much less bring it to the ground. Unfortunately, I hate to play the victim card, but it sure feels like I'm a victim of this huge system that that's totally stacked against my odds, well, my best interests. Yeah. And my odds. And I live in the most democratic country in the world. I've got it good, all things considered, but I still believe that at heart, we are wage slaves. We slave for gold, for our alien forebearers, the Anunnaki, who came to mine gold. I am preparing a presentation on that very topic to present tomorrow night. And it's fascinating. It's just amazing. And the idea that government workers or contractor workers are working alongside aliens, I've mentioned it in other shows. It's a thing. We get these insider disclosures. Well, I showed up for work and they told me it was a classified project, highly compartmentalized. And I showed up and there I was, and there's an alien there at work. And they introduce us, and then there's a brief description of the alien, and especially often a little emotional encapsulation, that gave me the creeps or seemed haughty, sneering, didn't want to associate with me. That was a common reaction seemingly. But then the human would say, I just got used to it. In other words, you had to get used to it or you couldn't keep that job for sure. And once you acclimate yourself to the idea that people from other places in space are still people with all the foibles that people have and the virtues that people have, it isn't as hard to conceptualize. And thanks to media such as Close Encounters of the Third Kind and Star Trek, Star Wars, all this stuff, on and on and on. And now Project Blue Book. It's coming out because there is in my opinion, it's coming out because there's such a preponderance of evidence from books like Tyler has brought here tonight and read an excerpt from, to stories and articles that I write, to stuff that Corae and her husband Ian Hack present. There is just so much, and so many people are waking up to this. Not everybody is. That's fine. It's not a requirement. But when you understand why things are the way they are, it on the one hand, it makes things easier to bear because if you're a rationalist, you've got an explanation. But on the other hand, it's emotionally very frustrating because here we are in this system that is working against our best interests, and we have to participate in it.
Mm-hmm. And
it's a economy. Everybody is got to feed the pockets and the vaults of the block projects. And I mean, we're lucky that we haven't been enslaved actually to be the workers on these other planets and on the moon and on Mars. And there's different places that have actually got humans that have been abducted. I mean, you see all the milk cartons, and these people have gone somewhere. You just can't disappear like that. Like there's millions of people over 60, 70, 80 years. Where have all these people gone? They've gone to a slave economy to work, and a lot of them are told that Earth was wiped out in a big nuclear blast and you're the last guys remaining. And so people don't question about, I want to go home, because they think they're the last ones. There's so many lies.
You're absolutely right. I was going to jump in and say what you just said, but you already said it.
We're psychic.
Yeah.
We are.
Well, we are.
And it's interesting you say about being slaves. So even these astronauts who were gifted to go to spend life on this other planet, while they were training, they had lost all contact with the outside world because this was top secret now. So they couldn't tell their families about it. They couldn't tell anybody about it. They just know that they were going to be gone for a while. Well, this trip got delayed 3 months. And during that 3 months, they had to stay in a military prison before they got to leave. They had to spend 3 months in prison before they could go. And then when they got back, they were put back in the prison, and they had to debrief for a year. Every day they would sit there in front of a room of people and explain that, what this planet is like. And they would have people taking notes, and it was a 3,000 page document now that it's available. But they're not even treating these people within the military, that within, these projects. Well, at least not, they didn't used to. They might even have it worse. I mean, God, that doesn't sound fun at all.
No.
But that's the price to pay to keep something secret.
You know, when you were reading, Tyler, about tanks, experimental tanks with monstrous creatures in them, it made me think of reports out of the bottommost level of Area 51, level 7.
Yeah.
I would imagine you're familiar with that, but
Oh, yeah.
these kinds of grotesque hybridization experiments and breeding or maintaining some creatures or whatever well, I don't know if they were creatures or beings to make that point, but basically living or extracting vital fluids, talking about Dr. Strangelove, the movie there, extracting their vital fluids and feeding off of them. So apparently they need some vitamin nourishment, but also emotional. They gain nourishment from our negative emotions, which you mentioned. And I've heard that called louche, Louche. And that's pretty well known in paranormal circles. Would you guys agree?
Yes, definitely.
Yeah, that actually happens right in front of our eyes every day. I'll go just a quick conspiracy. So, we hear about Ellen DeGeneres. She is apparently one of these deep state cabal members. Well, her whole set of her show is literally Epstein Island. It is not even a conspiracy. Like, you can look at pictures of the island and look at her backdrop of her set, and it's Epstein Island. Well, isn't it just funny how she has a show that she has somebody hiding every show to scare the shit out of people, and so they can release that fear. And just connecting the dots. She has Epstein Island in the background. They feed off of fear. We know there's a reptilian agenda. Ellen, there's a lot of controversy around her. So the fact that she has people jumping out and scaring the guests, when we get scared like that, we release something that they feed off of. And this is just one example. It sounds crazy until you really start diving deep and looking into it and connecting the dots, and there's really something there.
Yeah.
Corae, I was wondering if, well, first of all, I'm very curious to know what you made a distinction at the very beginning of the program. And by the way, for those just tuning in, it's Taboo Topics with Jean Broida. I have some great guest panelists here with me, Corae Hack and Tyler Kiwala, and we're being broadcast live on Global Enlightenment Radio Network. And the show will be uploaded to my YouTube channel, Taboo Topics with Jean Broida. Please click subscribe. And if you ring the little bell, if you click on the little bell, you'll get subscriber notices. This show will be uploaded to that channel in the future. And you can also go to tabootopics.life/shows and get into the groove there as well. But Corae, back to you. In your childhood, you said a distinction was made between being a medium and a something else?
A psychic.
A psychic. Could you explain that?
Sure. A medium is a person who can connect directly with spirit who has passed on. Now, that could be spirit of other beings who have passed to the other side. So they even have situations where a gray has been living on this planet. They die, their body passes, but the ones who are organic, some of them have souls, some of them don't, but some of the ones that have souls, they will pass over to the 4th dimension or the 5th dimension. And a medium will be able to directly connect with spirit. A psychic is different. Well, a medium is always a psychic, but a psychic is not able to necessarily connect directly with somebody who has passed away. So there's still it's almost like a block. They're able to read into the Akashic records to a degree. They can read information that is sent out in the universe, and they're able to catch information. Psychics can catch information from all around themselves, but they don't necessarily know where it's coming from. So they can predict events that are going to happen. Some of them get the information when they're sleeping. Some of them can actually go into a bit of a really light unconscious phase where you're still aware of everything, but information is coming to you and you don't quite realize it's coming, and then suddenly you've got a thought and then you think it's your thought and you're able to express it, where often it's put into your brain. It's almost that voice to skull. A lot of people who have this voice to skull think that they're actually getting psychic information as well. And sometimes that voice to skull information, they will abuse and use that person to try and get information, and sometimes false information, because sometimes they're trying to debunk or give disinformation to the public so it doesn't really get out. And then when people say, oh no, you were completely wrong on that, and you say you're psychic, well, people are not going to start believing that. They're going to say, oh, it's all not real. Psychics don't have that information. They don't know. Why can't, another popular question is, well, if you're a psychic, why don't you know the lottery numbers? Typical question. Guess what? We are all here to learn a lesson. And unless it's written that we're going to win the lottery, it's written into our journey, we're not winning the lottery. So psychics, you can't use that information for your own personal gain unless it's written into your timeline. So play if you want to, but you cannot, use all of this information for your own personal gain. You're here to learn lessons. And psychics or mediums, people that are gifted, I believe everyone has got innate psychic gifts. They're at least, very intuitive. Everyone has the ability to turn these gifts on by practice, but I'd almost say the difference between an intuitive and a psychic would be, an intuitive could learn how to play the piano and play in church and play a song, but an intuitive can play a concert piano. They can play Beethoven and Brahms and be classical. So their talent is much greater and higher in their ability and how they've developed as they've grown. So that medium is the one who can directly communicate with spirit. And
well, I'm glad you explained that, because I was not sure about that. And like you, my higher self and my spiritual guides told me that, for me at least, it's not proper to charge money for services or use my talents to win at gambling. But I met Russell Targ, ESP developer, ESP researcher under DARPA projects as a contractor, and he and his lab partner studied Uri Geller and other even more talented psychics in the 1960s, 1970s, and have published findings. You can comb through their videos, and they have just tabulated the results out of this number of trials on this certain test. This person got so many right, so many wrong. So that's science, pure and simple. And Targ developed an app available for your mobile device and downloadable from an app store, free, to train yourself. It's called ESP Trainer, and it trains you from a 1 in 2 chance, selecting between two bubbles, two circles, up to 1 through 6. So 1 in 2, that's 50-50 probability. 1 in 4, 25%. And according to Targ and many other people as well, psychic ability is like it operates like a muscle, that when you exercise it, it gets stronger. And that's certainly been my experience. What about you, Corae?
Definitely, I agree with that. I can reference the remote viewing class that Tyler and myself took. We happened to take the same remote viewing class with Margie Kay, which go to margiekay.com. She's got another remote viewing class coming up here in St. Louis. So you want to check that out, go to her page. I'm just going to give her a little plug because she did an excellent job. And at the beginning,
she's with MUFON, right? If you're going to give her a plug, tell everybody all about her.
Right. Margie is also another person that has telepathy with Emerald, my ET as well. And I met another woman in Eureka Springs who also communicated with Emerald. So we have this little triangle of these three women who communicate with Emerald. So it's kind of another connection we have. But the remote viewing class, when I began it, I started off with about a 70%, 75% accuracy rate. And by the time we were there for the last day, I was up to approximately 90 to 95% in all the things that we're doing. And Tyler had amazing results as well. And we would look at each other and say, holy, wow, that's crazy, you know? And so you start flexing that muscle. You learn how to just let go and think with your third eye and to push out all of the normal kind of thoughts a person say, you know, you get a vision, say, oh no, that can't be right. So you push that away and you think, no. And I'd erase something and then I'd put something else and it would be exactly what I did the second time when I ignored my conscious mind. And I just did what came to me naturally.
And Tyler, what? Let's hear from you. What about your amazing results here?
Well, when I first started, they weren't amazing. I was kind of just, it was almost discouraged, you know, but you just stick with it. And the problem is that you have to get in almost to like a little bit of a meditative state before you can really start doing this. But on the second day, at one point I was like shocked, surprising myself. I was shocked. She would have us remote view like coordinates or something. And I remote viewed, I just thought of something and you're supposed to draw what you see. So I drew a spiral and then she showed a picture of some stones with spirals carved into them. And I just couldn't believe that why I could have drawn anything in the world that I wanted to. And I drew a spiral. So I was totally shocked. I was like, how am I looking at a coordinate? Just send your consciousness to, and I don't even know what this coordinate meant or where it was on Earth. But there's a way to send your consciousness out, remote view an area, and draw what you see.
Right. And it's interesting too, because our whole front table was full of mediums and psychics and people who are gifted. And the people that were behind us, that were taking this for the first time who weren't. And our table was, I mean, we had such high percentages of being accurate. And the thing is, when you get people who are psychic or mediums or have high vibration, you start to tune into each other telepathically too. So it raises that information even more and the information that you get. But you still have to block out a certain amount because you don't want to tune into somebody who's being wrong, who has got on a totally different tangent as well. So it's kind of a balancing act. And I think Margie did a great job for doing that remote viewing for the first time. I know I had an experience when I worked at the psychic hotline in Calgary. A friend of mine, after I'd worked psychic fair, she goes, you should really work at the psychic hotline. And so I went in. I was a little unsure. I'd never been on a psychic hotline. I'd never heard of it really before. I was like, can I really do that on a telephone, tune into somebody, right? I know I could do it in person. So they told me to take a couple of calls. As it turned out, it was the owners of the company who pretended to be clients who had called. And I guess I got a 95% hit rate on them, and they were shocked because they only had 4 psychics there that had really high percentages and had a lot of clientele. So they immediately offered me a job. And I remember one time I was on the telephone, and I never found out until I talked with Margie years later when I was here in St. Louis. I was talking to a woman on the phone, and the next thing I knew, I was floating on her ceiling, looking down at her. And she had this fluffy pink sweater, and she was on a huge rocking chair. She had a table and a light. And I was looking at her legs, and I go, you have the most beautiful legs. She's like, excuse me? I said, were you a ballet dancer? And she goes, yes. And I says, I love your sweater. It's beautiful. She had a cowl neck and it was like all fluffy. And she goes, are you here? And I was going, I think I am. I think I'm like right above you. I described the table, the picture that was there, everything in her room. She was shocked, and I could actually see her looking up, looking around the room, trying to find me. And then whoosh, I was back in my body again. And I was like, what just happened? I have no clue what just happened there. And
Wow.
Margie explained to me that that was actually kind of like a remote viewing.
Yeah, it does sound like it. I just want to say one more thing before we move on to Corae's fabulous article about Russell Targ, the ESP guy. He said, for what it's worth, that after they polished up their ESP muscles in the lab and elsewhere, they did use their talents to win money on the stock market. So make of that what you will. Okay. Apparently their higher selves did not prohibit them from capitalizing on this talent. So
I think personally that if a person is investing money into developing their gifts, whether it be healing, because you can do massage, you can do frequency, you can do bowls, you can do all kinds of things when it comes to healing, when it comes to readings. If you're investing money in order to develop your gift, I believe that you should be able to charge. I myself have never, when I did do the psychic fairs or when I did private readings, I never had a set rate. I always said, donate what you can. And there's quite often, I know somebody didn't have any money and I said, this is a gift.
yes,
and
me too. A lot of psychics are that way. And I finally got to a fair where somebody was saying suggested donation is $20. And I thought that was kind of crass. Right. You know, I've had a guy recently, well, last summer, literally empty his pockets, because anytime I start a psychic reading, a tarot reading especially, I say, if you don't find any value in this, you owe me nothing. Because I have an off day or I can't read somebody from time to time. It doesn't happen often. But this guy literally emptied his pockets. He had $7. Well, this was at a conference, so I'm sure he had more money somewhere. But it's symbolic, emptying your pockets. You know, giving me all the cash you have on hand. You know, that's all I ask. You know, I'm not doing this to get rich. But apparently, Targ and his colleagues didn't mind a bit of that. Right. So on that note, Corae, take us into another fabulous topic, a taboo topic.
I found an article dated December 5th, 2014. The author is unknown, but it came from a site called Best Mediums. And so this is where I got this article from. It's called Telepathic Communication Proven for the First Time. And it appeared in that blog called Best Mediums. I thought it was an excellent, it's a short article, but it's very interesting. The power of the mind has fascinated scholars and spiritualists for centuries. While the brain may appear as a tangible, three-dimensional object, it is actually a process containing a potentially limited source of energy and information. Concepts such as telepathy and the possibility of the, quote, sixth sense are usually observed in the faraway realms of science fiction. But a recent experiment carried out by two professors has suggested that mind-to-mind communication is very much a reality. The experiment that they did was the following. The groundbreaking experiment, which was carried out by scientists at Harvard University, aimed to achieve that scientists call mind-to-mind direct technological communication, or telepathy. Scientists connected the two men, one located in India and the other in Paris, France, to a sensitive headset linked to the internet. In absolute secrecy, nearly 5,000 miles apart, The first person sent a simple thought message of hello. The recipient in France could not see the word itself, but correctly reported flashes of light in peripheral vision that corresponded to the exact moment the word hello was thought. 51-year-old participant Dr. Berg stated, quote, "We have shown that it is possible to send a mental message between two people without using sight, touch, sound, taste, or smell." So what is telepathy? Like any psychic gift, the possibilities of telepathy are endless. Through telepathy, you can communicate with other people, energies, spirits, and places beyond the use of pure words. Many believe that we are all born with a natural psychic ability to communicate with others, but we either grow up forgetting we have it or stop using it for a number of different reasons. When two people are communicating telepathically, messages usually come through via thoughts, feelings, images, or desires, as demonstrated in the Harvard study. There are a number of different ways to strengthen and develop your telepathic abilities, and the more you practice, the better you can become. Ask a friend to help you and keep a journal of your telepathic trials to keep track of your progress. Mental mediumship often involves communication via the use of telepathy within the consciousness of the medium. When you contact a telephone medium, the reader must first tune into their guides and ask the clearly departed who were close to the caller to come near and reveal themselves. At this point, visions, words, images, feelings, and spiritual experiences occur by flooding into the medium's subconscious. They will then deliver these messages onto their clients, sometimes thanking their guides as they go through. And that's the end of that article. And I agree with that to a certain, pretty well, I'd say 95%. The only thing I don't agree with is that all mediums don't necessarily know or work with their spirit guides. If they haven't been taught that way, they sometimes don't know how they're getting the information. But eventually, over time, I think they develop their own system and call it whatever system they feel comfortable with. I know Ian and myself, we were invited to become members of TEMPS, which is the Eastern Missouri Paranormal Society here in St. Louis. And I've been given permission by Donna Porterfield and Kent to, give out their names. If you go into Facebook, you can be part of TEMPS, TEMPS, and join the group. TEMPS has been responsible the last, I think, 2 or 3 years in doing the investigations at the Missouri Botanical Gardens. And Ian and myself have been part of those investigations over the last 2 or 3 times that they did the investigations there. They were amazing investigations. And I'm going to give a definition. I mentioned earlier that I've been classed as okay.
Investigating what exactly at the St. Louis, Missouri Botanic Gardens is what we're talking about here.
Yeah, investigating the paranormal activity at the Botanical Gardens. The former president, Teddy Roosevelt, has been seen there in an apparition. There have been many apparitions seen there, and people have interacted with spirit as well there. And so it's been really exciting to go in there and be the team that's the official investigation of the Botanical Gardens. It really shows the credibility and the trust they have in us when we go in there. So that has also been very exciting. They have
well done, you two.
Yeah, So they put together, they have the first year they put, if you go into YouTube, they did an investigation, and maybe I can provide the link later on that you can include later. They have a film about that. We just did another one for this last Halloween for Spirit in the Garden. Joe Palermo and Donna Porterfield Kent Barnett, they put everything together, and I'm also featured in an interview as to some things that happened to me in the gardens. There's no way we could have put all the footage in there. We've had orbs going across, we've had all kinds of activity, but we were limited by the amount of time that we had for the film. I was approached by a spirit by the name of Frank in an undisclosed location. I'm not allowed to give the location away. But I was asked many questions to ask Frank, and I was asked for 12 questions to Frank. When did he work there? What did he look like? I gave all kinds of information about his children, grandchildren, what kind of uniforms he wore. And Jennifer, one of the people that worked there, actually went back to research all of the information I got. And I had 100% detail on every single thing I got. And that was amazing to get that validation, knowing that I had talked to Frank. And so those kinds of things give you confidence as a medium that you're going about it the right way, right? And that's part of what an evidential medium is. If it's okay, could I read the definition of what an evidential medium is?
Of course it's okay.
Okay, perfect. As I said, I did not know that I was a medium until 2017, when a friend asked me to join her in the Witches' Night Out for Halloween, doing readings in her home. I did not know there was a difference between psychics and mediums, and I'd been told I'm an evidential medium. What is an evidential medium? This is a question that I am sure is on the lips of many people that are interested in mediumship, and more importantly, gaining real afterlife evidence. How does one categorize an evidential medium, and what it is, and what constitutes evidential messages from a medium? An evidential medium is an individual that is able to communicate information from spirit that can be verified unequivocally. The information passed from the evidential medium will be of such a high caliber that there will be no doubt as to its validity. Another point to note is that the evidence may be required to be verified after much research from another avenue or party. This would take away any doubt of the information being known beforehand. And it's interesting because often when you do a reading for somebody and you give them information, they're sometimes unsure, or sometimes they don't know their own family history even. And so you make a recommendation, go back and ask your family about this, see if this name comes up, see if this person, if you have any written histories about things. Those things all can come to light. And, I've often ended up giving an impromptu reading to somebody that I didn't even know I was going to read. It happened to Tyler. Tyler, did you want to share what happened when I gave you that reading?
Well, yeah, I was going to ask you to bring that up because it was strange how that all played out. But really quick to touch on, like you said, people don't know their family history, or just information you don't know unless you ask. You said you saw my mom's sister wearing some type of piece of jewelry or something, a butterfly or something that used to be my mom's. And I was like, well, I have no idea. And I asked my aunt the next day. She's like, why are you asking me this? I was like, I'm just curious. Do you have a piece of jewelry or butterfly that my mom used to wear? And she's like, I literally just dug out a box of her jewelry and yesterday and decided to put this butterfly clip in my hair. And I was like, yeah, that's it. I said, whenever you wear that, Corae, she told me that whenever you wear that, my mom is with you. So she wants you to know that every time you wear that, she's with you. But I had no idea what that meant until I did some further investigation. And she was blown away because she just had the random thought to go get this out after years of her passing one day. And then the next day, I asked her the question, and because of what I found out from Corae. But actually, I'll let you tell the story of how the whole meeting situation played out, and I was the only one that showed up, which I thought was strange in itself.
Yeah, it was really funny because Ian and myself, we decided to continue doing meetings. We'd been attending Ray Kostelanitch's meetings, and he ended up leaving and going elsewhere and just not doing the meetings anymore. And he had a very large following, in St. Louis here, and he just, disappeared. We know he stayed with us and we took care of things for him. But so many people asked us, could you guys continue the meetings? Like, you guys know so much about all of this, and Ian does the videos, and, you communicate with George, one of the extraterrestrials that Ray, had communicated with. So we decided that we would take off for these meetings because everyone is asking us to do them. So we finally got down to it, and we were still at Sunset Bowling, the same place that Ray did the meetings, and asked Dave if we could have them. He said, sure. And I think we had, 4 or 5 meetings, I think, total. We had 2 really great meetings where we had up to 25 people. And then the weather I think it was because of the weather not being very great. We still came because we thought we don't want to not show up and somebody is actually, coming to the meeting and they'll get upset because we didn't bother showing up, right? And that was the meeting that Tyler came to. No one showed up for that meeting except for Tyler. And I was like, okay, there's a reason that this is going on. And I just sat back and took a deep breath. And I said, what's this meeting for? And then that's where Tyler's mother and family stepped in. And I started to give Tyler, I would say it was at least a half an hour reading on things that were going on, things that happened in his family, things to watch out for. I think I even pointed out he wanted to know when he was going to meet someone special. All those kinds of things kind of filtered into this reading, and he was so blown away. I know he was very disappointed the meeting didn't take place, but that was meant to be. That was meant to be for Tyler.
Well, I left there on cloud 9 because, well, for one, I wasn't expecting it. And just to add to the story, I didn't actually know you and Ian very well at all at that point. We were essentially strangers. I had seen you at the meetings, but we weren't friends per se. So just the fact, it was just caught me totally off guard. So I can attest, whatever Corae is telling you, it's legitimate. It's definitely a gift.
I started coming out a little bit more because you see, like Long Island Medium, she'll start talking to people in just odd places. I had a situation 2 months ago, and we were at a restaurant here in St. Louis after a movie, and we were with a couple other friends, and our waitress, she was a young lady, and I kept watching 2 spirits following her around the restaurant, and I'm thinking, they want to talk to her. And I was like, how do I go about this? Because I've never approached anyone in public with a message. And I thought, geez, I don't want her to get upset or anything. So finally, after we finished her meal and she brought the bill, I just I asked her, I said, I'm a medium and I've got a few messages for you. Would you like to hear your message? Because you need to ask for permission first, right? And she goes, oh my gosh. So she kind of crouched down, and I shared her message about her aunt. Her aunt had passed away the last month and a half. Her father passed away within the last 6 months. And, you know, I talked to her about conversations she had with her father, specifics about the conversations and specifics about her education. She didn't know which way she should go. And I repeated back everything that her father and her aunt had been telling her. And she had another question, and she said, can you ask my aunt this one particular question? And she asked it. I'm not going to give details because it's kind of private. And she looked at me very shocked because I gave the exact answer that her aunt used to say to her all the time. The other thing was that her aunt had given me a nickname that only was between the both of them. And I said, you guys have a nickname. And I told her what it was. I thought she was going to faint. And my friend, you know, my friend's, his wife, she knew I was a medium and a psychic, but I'd never done anything in front of them. After the young lady left, she was like so grateful because she said, my family, my mom, my sisters, they all go to mediums, they pay all this money, and I have no money. And here you are giving me a reading. I can't believe it. It's like, oh my God, she gave me these hugs afterwards. And she's like, I feel so blessed right now. This is what I needed. I needed these answers. And I said, I was meant to come here and I was meant to give you these messages. And I felt so wonderful that I was able to give her this gift as well, you know. And my friend, she's sitting there with her mouth open like the whole time, right? She goes, wow, I never knew that you could do that.
Sitting here with my mouth open. And I've never been approached by somebody I didn't know saying, I have messages for you from the beyond. Can you imagine? Can you imagine? Well, you were there. You don't have to imagine.
Yeah, it feels amazing to be able to do that for someone. I left almost more happy than the young lady that I, you know, did that impromptu meeting for. And it's such a blessing to have that. You know, I've always followed things. If I'm driving and I get a feeling not to go that way, I don't go that way. I mean, we all have lessons to learn, and I've had a lot of horrific things happen in my life. But in the end of it, I know that I asked to learn that lesson while I was down here. And if you don't learn your lesson, you continue to repeat the same mistakes over and over until you get it into your skull. Leave it, learn from it, leave it alone, walk away from it, and then it's all over. And then you move on to your next lesson. So those times where you feel like, you know, you've got usually parents saying, don't you ever learn? Why do you keep doing this? Why are you doing that? Like, it's because you're not learning your lessons. If you learn your lesson, you move on, and then that doesn't happen anymore. And you can ask for guidance. You can ask for guidance from your angels, your spirit guides, for anything, your family, your relatives. Ask for help. Angels, they can only come if you ask for permission. So
you
ask
give
your
them
angels.
permission.
Right.
If you give them permission, yeah.
Right. If you give them permission, they will come and they will aid you. I have an interesting, I have an experience that I had written down here, and I get feathers. I get a lot of feathers given to me. There was one time, like I used to give Christmas wreaths to my family in the cemetery in Calgary. To my son who was stillborn, I would make a Christmas wreath for him. I would make one for my mom and my dad for their gravesite, and for my grandfather as well. And I was making a Christmas wreath, and I went to go put the Christmas wreath in the trunk. I came back to make the next one, and there was this large white feather just laying on top of the wreath. I was like, wonder who this feather's from, right? I knew it was a spiritual feather. And so I finished that wreath, and I went back to the trunk, put the next one in, came back, and there was kind of a white feather with blue edges around it, all around the edges of it. I never seen a feather like that in my life. It's like, okay, now I've got pimples and everything. And I'm just thinking, wow, I know spirit is really with me. I know the angels are with me. And so feathers have been a great indicator for me when they're trying to get my attention, say, okay, you've got angels and you've got guides around you and you've got family members around you that love you. I had another incident. I grew up, my parents had this friend, and she's like a second mom to me, and I used to sleep over at her house. And she had breast cancer, and I went to visit her very often during this time. She had breast cancer. I asked her son to to let me know if she passed away during that time before my next visit, and he said he would. I got sick, and I was sick for about 7 or 8 days and didn't have a chance to talk to her. When I phoned a few days later after recovery, he told me that she had passed away, and they had the funeral. I was so upset with him that I could not go to the funeral. She was like my second mother. And I was wailing. I was so upset. I go into the bathroom and I'm running the tub, and I'm just sitting on the toilet waiting for the tub to fill up. And as I'm crying, I'm just talking to her. And this was in the middle of winter. The bathroom had no windows. And as I'm sitting on the toilet, from the ceiling all the way down drifted this white feather and landed on my lap. And I thought, wow.
That's amazing.
That is amazing. That's an April.
And at one time in my life, when I was gypsying around quite a bit and camping out in woods quite a bit, I had feathers coming to me. I know exactly what you're talking about, objects coming to you. I know other people with psychic abilities who acknowledge those abilities have similar phenomenon coming to them. That said, we are nearing the end of our 2-hour gab fest here on Taboo Topics with Jean Broida. And it's that time of the show where we get to shout out our accomplishments and our plans for a brighter future. So let's start with you, Corae. What do you want to shout out here?
I just wanted to plug this. That's official term. That Ian and I have a group on Facebook called St. Louis Lightworkers for Truth and Disclosure. And we've invited Eugene and Tyler and Aaron and several other people to come and post on our page. Please join our group. We want to have more people, we have about 35 to 38 people right now. We invite all of you to join our interesting group where we post and invite other related groups and podcasters to share their great work. All subjects paranormal, spiritual, and vibration get great work. Vibration raising. If there are any related topics you want to start a conversation about or have an interesting person you would like to share with us, please feel free to do so. We have the rules posted, and it's a non-fear, high vibrational group. We look forward to you joining. And then also I wanted to mention TEMPS, the Eastern Missouri Paranormal Society, has a Facebook group also. It's headed by Kent Barnett and Donna Porterfield. So check out this group and join their group as well. Join Tyler's group, he will explain that. But if you would also like to have a paranormal investigation, please don't hesitate to Facebook us in a private message on the Lightworkers page, and we can discuss your case to see if we can help. We can always talk about things and see if there's anything that we can do to do a paranormal investigation. So just hit us up in a private message, and we'd love to hear from you as well.
On Facebook.
On Facebook.
And is that how people can get a hold of you? Yes?
Yeah. Yes.
And that's Corae, Corae, Hack, HACK.
Correct.
It's been a real pleasure having you on the show. And is there anything else you need to add in terms of your shout outs?
I just love all the support. I love all of your shows. And, people, when I just share my stories, they say, wow, you had so much happen. And they were saying, I've had nothing happen. I go, I've had way more happen than I can even talk. I could talk for 5 hours on the things that have happened to me. but I just say, enjoy the things and express gratitude and say thank you to everyone around you, spirits, whatever it may be. Say thank you for showing me this, because when you thank and you live with gratitude, you will have more come into your life.
That's so beautiful, and that's so well said, Corae.
It is.
Tyler, how can we tell us about your projects and shout it out, buddy?
First of all, I want to take the opportunity to thank you also for having me on. I like this. It's a unique it's a unique platform to bring articles and discuss them. I don't know that I've ever really seen a show that does that. So, and congratulations. I know it's still the beginning stages, but I know you're going to grow. I see it. So,
Yes.
thank you. I'm glad to be a part of this.
Thank you all. Thank you both.
Yeah.
Tyler, how can people contact you, and what are you up to?
So I I'm co-host of Journey to Truth podcast, which you see behind me, with the friend Aaron, who was on your show. I ask if you're interested in any of this stuff, find us on YouTube and subscribe to our channel, and follow us if you want, because we have a lot of exciting guests. This week, we haven't announced it yet, but I guess I can announce it here. We have John D'Souza, former FBI agent, on. And we're going to be talking about a lot of interesting stuff. So that's going to be exciting.
Wow, that is awesome.
Yeah. So if anyone's interested, go to Journey to Truth podcast on YouTube. You can find us on any podcast platform, but on YouTube for the video platform. We have t-shirts for sale on teespring.com. We have some posters on the way. We have merchandise and all that stuff. So
and when does Podcast to Truth air? When does it go live?
Once it's not live, we don't do them live, but they premiere as they're live on YouTube every Thursday at 8 p.m. Central.
Perfect.
You should also mention, Tyler, about if they purchase items off your link and how it benefits your podcast.
Oh, correct. Yeah. So we have an affiliate who sponsors us somewhat. The Omnia Radiation Balancer. It's a patch that you put on your cell phone or any device that any radiating device that negates the harmful frequency, the harmful radiation that's coming in. It's been tested on many levels, and it actually works. We have a link in our podcast description below each video, and if you purchase through that link, we get a little kickback from each purchase, and it's just one of those, sponsor agreements, but it really does work. We wouldn't even promote it if it didn't. It's fantastic. I used to have chronic headaches. I put these on all of my devices in the house, and they went away. They stopped. I don't have headaches anymore. So it's really good stuff. Omnia Radiation Balancer. And I could send you the link too, Gene.
I remember that you talked about that before, and people are getting some significant results. Let's just put it to you that way. Yeah. Anything else, Tyler? How can people contact you?
You can email us at journeytotruthpodcast@gmail.com. I think that's right. If not, I'll give it to you in the link. And then, or you can message us on Facebook, which our Journey to Truth podcast page. Just message us through there. Those would be the two best ways to reach us. And if you want to hang out with us, come to either the ECETI conference or Dimensions of Disclosure this year. We'll be there among many other fantastic people. So that's what we're at.
I'm jealous about that one, but that's okay. I mean, I'll get over it. I get it because I get to go to the Human Origins Conference in Albuquerque with a press pass. Thank you, Linda and Richard Smith, had the organizers of this Human Origins Festival. And it's just going to be awesome. I'm just thrilled to death. And as we wind up this episode on, March 8th, 2020 of Taboo Topics with Gene Broida, please look for the show on the Global Enlightenment Radio Network, GERN, the best darn paranormal radio network in the multiverse. And you can find this show uploaded in a few days or eventually to my new YouTube channel. Please click subscribe and the little bell for alerts. It's called Taboo Topics with Jean Broida. You can get there from my fledgling website, tabootopics.life/shows. Please check out my book, Unknown Objects, the Top 10 U.S. UFO Cases. It's available on Amazon. And if you have Kindle Unlimited, it's a free read. So run, don't walk, and wrap your mind around those fascinating stories. You can visit my personal website, lightwork111.com. Send me an email, Jean, Jean, at lightwork111.com. And I submit articles to several online publications on a regular basis as Lightworker 111, notably, as I've said before, thedailyconspiracy.com and survival.update. I am so glad we could be here tonight and share this amazing time together. It really has gone fast. And I've said it before, I'll say it again. A show like this simply isn't possible without chatty, informative guest panelists such as yourself. So I am blessed, truly blessed to know you, to have you here with me here. None of this would be possible without alien technology. Am I right?
Yeah, right.
We've got about a minute. Any last thoughts, either of you?
I'm so grateful that both of you are my personal friends as well as the awesome talent that you have, and that we've all meant to be connected. And I'm just so grateful, and I know Ian is as well. I'm just so grateful to be here and to have all of you in my life. And love and light to everyone out there. Thank you for listening to.
What she said. Exactly. Exactly. I couldn't agree more. And the Human Origins concert, Jean, conference that you're going to, I know Clifford Mahudi will be speaking there, and we had him on our podcast. He is amazing, amazing Native American elder with some wisdom like you wouldn't, that you just can't learn. It's really amazing. So I'm jealous.
I'll be practicing my on-the-spot video interviews, like 5-minute. I imagine there'll be hubbub and frenzy like there is at most conferences, and cornering people near a plant and saying, hey, let's dish the dirt for 5 or 10 minutes. Can you help a gal out? And I'm just so jazzed. Yeah. I'm so shy. I have such trouble meeting people. It's going to be a hoot and a half, I'll tell you what. So basically, here it is, beginning of March. We're coming in like a lion, and it's an amazing universe that we live in. People, please be kind to each other. Love yourself first and foremost, and that takes care of the rest of it. You are enough. And that is our take on it for March 8th, 2020. Thank you, everyone, for tuning in, listening to Taboo Topics with Jean Broida at tabootopics.life/shows. Again, thank you so much to Corae Hack and Tyler Kiwala. That's it. We'll see you next week. Over and out.
Good night.
That one day this nation will rise up, live out the true meaning of its creed. We hold these truths to be self-evident.
In the councils of government, we must guard against the acquisition of unwarranted influence, whether sought or unsought, by the military-industrial complex. The potential for the disastrous rise of misplaced power exists and will persist.
The very word secrecy is repugnant in a free and open society, and there is very grave danger that an announced need for increased security will be seized upon by those anxious to expand its meaning to the very limits of official censorship and concealment.